Hello again, this is Founder Laerun, and this is the DM 101 series. This is the table layout part 2. One of the things that's important in Fantasy Grounds is that you lay your table out the same way every time. This was a trick that I had learned from the Digital Dungeon Master and other pioneers of the Fantasy Grounds virtual tabletop. So the first thing I'm going to do is explain a little bit about what's happening when you first log in. So upon login, you're going to get this campaign setup window. You'll have your chat window over here on the left, and then all your options and banners on the right-hand side. If you want to use the campaign setup window, this is here for you. It makes it a little easier. But this front page, this very first page, is just a way to get to your help easier, your manual. You have your forums and your wiki user guides. So that's just a really helpful little guide there. Next is to load your data modules. So if you own the core rulebooks, or any of them for that matter, you can click on the 5e core rules and it will load those up as a group. So I'm going to go ahead and load those up. Usually it takes about a minute or so. It has to go through the library and check that you have the content. And once it verifies it, it'll pop them up and it gives you a verification window. This is typically like maybe 1 or 2 minutes tops. It does take it some time if you have a lot of content like I do. So best thing is to not have too much content. It all depends on your tastes. I'm waiting for that to load up. Once it does, we'll continue with the lesson. But this is part of getting set up and laid out for your campaign. And as you can tell on the bottom, you have 12 slots. Those are shortcuts. So if you need to make shortcuts at any time, you're welcome to do that. That's these bottom 12 shortcut bars. So now here we have the modules have been loaded. They're verified. They have a little check mark. That means they're loaded into the campaign. So I'm going to go ahead and close that. This particular session series is going to focus on Lost Mine of Phandelver as a tutorial / new DM video. So if you've already looked at these before, or classic, a lot of this information will be repetitive, but still good to learn. So now I have this modules folder up here. So if I want to load anything on the side or in the beginning before I get going, I'm going to go ahead and click the modules button so that you'll be able to tell or see what extra additional modules that I'm going to be loading. So that's going to take it a minute. It's going to go through my library, and I have a huge library of content. So Fantasy Grounds has to course through all that and then call upon them all and make a list. And it's quite a bit of material. So here, I'm going to go ahead and type Lost Mine. You have a search field on the left, and you can search by author on the right. So now that I have this loaded, I'm going to go ahead and click on Lost Mine of Phandelver. And it usually takes about a minute to load at the most. Once I'm done, I can click on all and then get rid of my search criteria. And this shows everything that I have loaded. So this book here is a shared book, and so is this DM's Guide Players section. I'm going to go ahead and unload that because I really don't need it. The only ones I have now are Lost Mine, Player's Handbook, Monster Manual, and the Dungeon Master's Guide. If you want a little bit more immersion or lore about the region that you're playing in, I would recommend the Sword Coast Adventures Guide. And then I want to make sure that I have this unfiltered. And as you can see, there's 3 or 4 different setups here. So if you're going to create characters, you'd go ahead and load the player side. I'm just going to load up the guide and the maps, and this will give me additional information about the setting. And I probably won't use most of it, but it's a handy tool to have when you don't know much about the region or the politics of the factions, anything like that. So I went ahead and loaded the maps and the Adventures Guide. So once I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and close that. And I'm going to go to this next window, which is the campaign setup options. So the options come up at the very end. This is a little bit different than Classic, but nonetheless, this is very similar. Now, if I don't want this to come up again when I come back into the table, I'm going to go ahead and click on the Show on Load. I'm going to actually unclick that so it doesn't come back up. And then I'm going to click on Options, and that'll bring up the Options menu. And then from here, I'm going to go ahead and close this or click Finish, and that'll dismiss that setup window. So the only things I'm going to mess with right now in the Options menu is if you want this decal to change, you can click on that. You can turn it on or off. If you have other extensions and artwork loaded, you can go ahead and use this. Also, I'm going to turn on the dice tower. So if I turn just on the dice tower, it only show to my characters that are connected to me. But if I want to see it as a Dungeon Master also, you click on Chat, show GM roles, you turn that on. Then the dice tower turns on in the bottom right. I'm right-clicking on this dice tower and unlocking the position, and then I'm going to drag and drop it here next to the 4-sided dice, and then I'm going to lock it. And this is part of my setup routine. I'm going to go ahead and close this options for now and continue with setup. So I'm going to go ahead and right click on this field here in the chat window and hit clear. That gets rid of all the extra text. And then I'm going to unlock it as well by right clicking on it and selecting the lock logo. And I'm going to go ahead and set this baby right here. Once I have it locked, I'm going to go ahead and lock the position, or once I have it in position. And this is traditionally how I always set up my table. The next step is on the top right. There is a combat tracker. It's the 2 swords. If I open that up, I'm going to go ahead and bring this up as well. And I'm going to stretch it down a little bit in case I get a nice group of people fighting. And that should be it. Also, something important is the party tracker and some of the other groups in here, and I'll explain those in the next video. Hopefully this kind of helps you with the layout. This is a real basic generic one. As I build this campaign, or as I build this video, we'll be adding more things for convenience. So these are more or less things that make things easier for you as a game master and a player. So these are kind of like features that you don't really understand or know about right away until you start using Fantasy Grounds and you realize, oh, that's why they did that. So these are things that make quality of life a lot better. So we'll see you in the next video. The last step here is in the chat window. I typed a / and then save, and I'm going to hit enter, and that saved the data. So this will end this video, which is the table layout. I just showed you a real basic setup. As I go further along, we're going to go ahead and show you the rest of that. We'll see you next video.